Welcome back for our last talk of the day. Our final guest. Let's see who it is.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
hey,
me.
that's you.
Yeah, you're
Well,
you're so funny. Ha
because in
ha.
that case, I don't need these anymore.
Yay.
Ah, freedom at last. So, please take it away.
All right. Okay. Oh, I can get rid of these as well, I think. Yeah, here we go. Um, yeah, I'm Josefiene, as many of you know, and some of you don't know. I've been around in the Hex community since way back when in 2014, when you took me to our first Hex event in Paris.
Yes.
Um, I thought I was just going to go shopping or something, but then it ended up being in such a remote location that I just kind of just sat there the whole time and listened to all the Hex talks. And by the end of the weekend, I knew a fair bit about Haxe theoretically. I still don't know much about it practically, but I know it's awesome and it does a lot of good for a lot of people. And then I just kind of got more drawn into it over the years. And so, well, if you had told me, I don't know, like if you told me 8 years ago or 6 years ago that in 6 years the one thing that was gonna still be the same in my life and still stick around would be X, I would probably have laughed at you. But here we are 6 years later, still going on. Now, I want to talk a little bit about these stretches of time between these events,
Right.
right? Because right now I'm like pretty high on adrenaline and Hax event and community love and everything. And I feel like that every time, right? Every time at an event, I feel super happy. And every time after, I feel tired but super happy. But what actually happens between those events is quite interesting because I go through this every time, right? It's kind of after an event, I feel super confident, and I announce the next one, which is how I keep myself going. I announce the next one in a spur of a sort of moment thing. And then somewhere in the middle there, I get really depressed. Like there are these super long, dark nights of the soul leading up to these events. And at first, the first couple of times, I thought, oh my God, like, this is so horrible. What am I doing here? Massive imposter syndrome, but also just this doubt. It's like every little piece of criticism or every little piece of negative feedback would basically just spiral me into this vortex of why am I even doing this? Why am I putting up with this? It's all so hard. So at first I thought it was something about Haxe or Hex events that was the problem, right? That kind of this was just not the right place for me or whatever. Which, I can convincingly tell myself that it's not the right place for me because I can't write a single line of code in Hex. So, right? But over the years, I realized that this is quite normal and that everyone experiences this. I was just reminded of this earlier today when Alex mentioned that at some point you had wanted to have the JVM target removed from Hex.
That was me who wanted to have it
Yeah,
removed. Yeah.
yeah, you wanted to
Yeah.
have it removed. So I'm kind of saying that I'm not the only one going through these phases. It's
Right.
it's not something that is specific to Hex or my being involved with Hex or right. It's just something specific to it's just this experience we all go through every now and then where it's really, really difficult to keep ourselves going, especially when we're by ourselves, right? For me,
Right.
it's like with these events, the more by myself I am, the more I do it just alone, the harder it is. And I think for you, it's kind of the same. The more you have to work by yourself, the less feedback you get, the harder it is.
Well, it's not so much about feedback. It's more about at some point you arrive at the point where you're wondering, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
What's the purpose here?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? And events like this, I think, really help to remind us why we are doing this.
Yeah. It's just that actually, like, if I put on another event in a year, in 6 months, I'm not going to remember this. In 6 months, I'll be depressed and crying and panicking. But there are some things that I found have helped, which is like just getting people around you, being like, just asking for this emotional support from other people. Like for me, it's really helpful. We go through this game a lot where when I want to quit, you tell me that we're not quitting. When you want to quit, I tell you we're not quitting.
Right.
And as long as we don't happen to want to quit at the same time, it goes all right. But even when we do happen to quit at the same time, one of us will usually go and be like, we've come so far. Right?
And it becomes more difficult if we're doing something new, because we've done 2 Haxe where we invite people to our living room, and we knew how that would work.
Yeah.
But doing this in particular, we had no idea.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how this would look exactly until like a week ago or something.
Yeah.
And there was so much uncertainty due to that.
And that's like one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the Haxe community, which I'm extremely grateful for. Like for me, this has been the bestest personal development excuse I could find, really, because it's a very worthwhile cause. I've met some of the greatest people of my life in the Haxe community. There are some people that I've been friends with for years and years who've helped me immensely, just growing and taught me new things. And also the sheer diversity of people. I mean, there are so many different personalities from different cultures and different countries, but also from different, like, Haxe brings together a really wide range of developers even, right? Everybody, or a lot of people, there are lots of game developers, sure, but we also have incredibly creative people who do all sorts of things. And once you start asking people about their hobbies and side projects, it gets really interesting, right? It's an incredibly interesting, incredibly kind and welcoming bunch of people. And I think that's what sort of keeps me going every time.
I really like that you mentioned diversity, because the term has become a bit difficult, because people don't talk about intellectual diversity anymore. And the way you describe this is that there are so many people, and that's exactly it. That's intellectual diversity, which nowadays nobody mentions anymore. So I find it really interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I find it like really interesting, because I have met people who do very different things and who believe very different things. Yeah, and who are also like work in very different situations. And to me, this has been incredibly helpful. But like the one thing that we all have in common, or what a lot of us have in common, which is a bit unfortunate, or which I struggled with for a long time, is despite my bubbliness, I'm actually a very introverted person, right? And in the sense that I find I'm very sensitive to social contact.
Right.
And I think a lot of us are, right? I have never really met, I mean, we're all fairly good at partying, but I have never met a single person in the Haxe community who has not had the pre-party, I don't want to go blues, right? Every time before someone commits to something, like I've heard that story so many times, like, oh, I didn't really want to do it. I didn't really want to go, but now I'm glad I went. This is kind of all our shared experience. And
Thomas just said pretty much that in the chat, like, I was having a panic attack last night. Like, why did I sign up to do a talk? Yeah, it's exactly that.
And it's like, I just want you all to know that you're not alone with this. We all have these feelings. We all have our dark night of the Haxiverse. And I think what I learned to get better at is just asking for the emotional support, just finding people who will encourage you. And be a bit careful about that, right? Like, you don't
Yeah.
want yes sayers. You don't want people who just love everything you do. That's not the point. I usually don't even need people to help me fix my problems. I just need people to cheerlead and tell me, like, you can do it. Don't quit. And I think we all need a little bit of that over now and again, right? And even the very central people to Haxe, like you, for example, who can come across as like very confident and like you're, for the longest time you were the only maintainer of the compiler. So I've heard people tell me that they were afraid to approach you or shy, and nobody really thinks that you also struggle with doubt, right? That you also struggle with the situation.
Well, as I said, it's mostly when you try something new like
Yes,
this,
and
then
this
it's
is
really
totally
bad.
normal.
Once
And
you're used to doing something, I think if we did this again, like in 2 weeks, I would have much
yeah, but
less
that was
problems with
that
that.
was my experience with the Hex summits or all the Hex events. It's
Yeah.
like my first Hex Yale summit was like the most nightmarish thing for me, right? I had the most nightmarish experience of the situation. Everybody else thought it was fine. Everybody else had a completely
Yeah,
wonderful
it's
time.
always like
So,
that.
so it's like just because you're having a hard time doesn't mean that it's not worth it or that people don't appreciate it, right? And we all have these dark spells,
Yeah.
and we all come out of them again, right? And we all find ways to connect, which brings me to the next bit of my talk. It's really about why I insist on giving these inspirational speeches and why we do
Don't
these.
laugh about it.
No, I
It's
mean,
actually,
I'm
I
kind
think
of
it's
like,
very important, especially in these times.
I've become intensely interested in the psychology of open source communities over the years, actually, and like, what is it that drives us to do this? Also, what is it that disappoints us, and how can we kind of get better at managing this? Because I think that, again, like most of my my experience in this community has been a mirror of everything, all the insecurities that I had in all my other areas of my life. This has been like they all come to the surface when you're in a situation like this. They all come to the surface when you're in a community, because in the end we're very emotional creatures, right? We are, I mean, we think we're rational, and sometimes we are, but we also react very emotionally to what's going on around us. And for me, like, it's been like I've struggled with, in the end, we all just want to be loved. In the end, we all just want someone to tell us you're doing a good thing. And sometimes that takes a while. Like, sometimes it just takes a while for that to show up, right? Because nobody knows you're struggling. Nobody knows, like, that you just need to hear a nice word. And we can forget about that because we're all on with this technical stuff the whole time, and it's all pull requests and issues and, I don't know, benchmarks and whatever. But, like, there are no emotional benchmarks. It's really hard. And I would sit there by myself wishing that someone would tell me something nice.
Well, it would have to be someone where you would actually believe that, right?
Yes,
That's be
yeah.
genuine.
It has to be genuine, but also, like, what I learned is that I have to reach out to get that, right? That
Yeah,
I can do a lot to actually get what I need and also get rid of what I don't need, right? I've learned over the years to say, look, if you are not going to contribute positively to the situation, I'd rather not hear your opinion, for example, because it doesn't help me sometimes, right?
Yeah, in
That's,
some
in some
situations, it's
situations,
just not what
it's
you
like
need. Yeah.
nagging doesn't help.
Yeah.
Like, for me, right? Some people might take it as some people might go at criticism and be like, oh yeah, that's very helpful. Let me
Yeah.
just open 5 issues and I'm going to deal with it straight away. That does not work for me.
Yeah.
For me, it's like if you're going to do something about the problem, mention it. But if you just want to point out the same things to me over and over again,
Right.
that doesn't help me.
Yeah.
Right. But that's something that I had to learn about myself and then also carry to the outside. Right, where I had to go like, well, I'd rather like to be spoken to in this way, or I'd like to I need some reassurance. I mean, now I go to you and say, I need a pep talk. Right, I need a pep talk. And I think it's perfectly okay to just go, I need a bit of a virtual pep talk or something. And especially during this Corona time, like one thing that I've noticed is since we all have decreased social contact, we have to be much more mindful about actually conscientiously creating spaces where we can have social contact.
Right.
So something like this event, for example, is a good thing. I have a weekly chat with some people I know from a writing platform where I write, and we just, hang out once a week and Skype for half an hour and just talk to each other. And it doesn't always have to come from above, right? The Haxe Foundation or me as the event person in the Haxe Foundation or you as the compiler developer. Like you're not the only one who gets to put up events. You're not the only one who gets to put up space, right? If you need space, if you need to connect with people, you can do that. Nobody is going to stop you, right? That's the other big thing that I learned during the last couple of years is nobody can stop you, right? If you want to do a thing, do a thing. And it takes courage because you are opening the doors and chances are that you're opening the doors to no one. You have to have enough courage to open the doors to the possibility that nobody will show up at first, right? And every other week in my writer chat, I sit there by myself for half an hour because people are too busy. And every time before I do a Haxe event, I'm terrified that nobody will show up, like legit terrified that nobody will show up or prepared for the possibility that nobody will show up. But that's okay, right?
It's a risk you have to take.
It's a risk you have to take, but also nothing bad happens if nobody shows up.
Well, you feel bad. But...
You feel bad, but you try again.
Yeah.
Right? You try again. You get up and you try again. And I think that is what this whole community...
But in order to do that, you have to have this feeling, what I was mentioning earlier, that why am I doing this? And if you cannot answer that, then it's really hard to just try again because you just get stuck.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think is really difficult to figure out is your purpose in this. I have found that the more I do things so that others are happy with me, the less fun I'm having along the way. It sounds really tacky, but you really should not do things to please other people. You should be mindful of other people. You should work, but in the end, you should do stuff because it makes you feel good. And if it doesn't make you feel good, like, don't do it, right? If you're not making any progress emotionally with the situation, like I am still doing the Haxe events because every time it goes better for me. Right. Every time it's easier, so I have emotional progress, right? If I were still the same racked bundle of nerves every time that I was 3 or 4 years ago, I would not be doing this anymore, right? But it's like, no, do it because you want to. And if you don't want to, don't do it. Like, don't bully yourself. It's like we talk about a lot about other people pressuring us into things and other people bullying us into doing things in a sense. But actually the biggest bully is ourselves, right? So like, don't bully yourself into doing shit that you don't want. But also at the same time, show up. If you want to show up, show up. It's especially in the Haxe community, nobody's gonna hurt you. Nobody's gonna laugh at you. Or, I mean, this is one of the kindest bunch of people I have ever met. And yes, we have some interesting situations here and there. And, surely there are people kind of clash sometimes, or, you have weird run-ins. But on the whole, it's an incredibly welcoming space.
Right, I agree.
And you can try things out. Like if you're afraid of public speaking, this is the best place to try it, because really everybody is just going to be so, like, I am so happy every time someone new shows up. I'm so delighted in also like watching people grow and like just seeing how they develop. So,
Yeah, and
and
we really appreciate everyone who joined this event to speak into a webcam for half an hour or an hour, because it's not easy.
yeah,
It's really difficult to just sit there and speak, and you aren't even sure if anyone is listening. It just kind of makes you feel weird.
yeah.
So
And
it's such a great thing that people did this.
yeah, I'm
And
immensely
the stream has been
grateful.
online for 6.5 hours now, so we have a lot of content, and that's thanks to
And I'm
you,
like,
thanks to the people who
yeah.
joined us.
And I'm super grateful also for like, yeah, this willingness to try new things together, right? Which does not only extend to new libraries or new projects. It's also this is the new thing for us. And it's, yeah, like I think sometimes we could just share a little more with each other and reach out a little more. And it's kind of like this, it's a little bit like keeping a candle on, right? Like if you can light a candle for someone else, do it. If you can reach out to someone else because right now you're feeling pretty good, do it. So that when you need, a pep talk or you need a little bit of help, people are also going to be there for you. And like just hold the door for each other, right? Just make some space for someone else. And I think especially in times like this, it's extremely important. And it doesn't happen by itself. That's the difference between virtual. Why virtual is so hard is that all the things that just happen in a physical environment that happen naturally, you have to conscientiously create in a virtual environment. I don't know, there's like very interesting research on why we're friends with the people we're friends with. And it turns out that the biggest determining factor in friendship is physical proximity, right? You end up friends with people who live next to you, basically, with your neighbors or people who are in your class at school or something like that. And we don't have that online. Well, we kind of do. We actually are next to each other because we're all on this Haxe thing together. It's just that we don't use that, right? It's like we're afraid of reaching out to people and we feel not worthy of reaching out to people. Where actually, like, this is as warm as a sales call ever gets, right? Because you have a shared interest. You have a perfectly good reason to reach out to each other. And you don't really need a pull request to do that. You can just go and be like, hey, I want to talk about Haxe a little bit. Do you want to come? Right? Which sort of is one thing that has been like become more obvious during this event while we were doing this, is that people are really hungry for like just a hangout space.
Right.
Right? I had the feedback several times also, just to kind of like, it would be nice to just hang out. Right? With fewer presentations and more space to just hang around. So maybe we'll get something like that going.
We'll see where the future takes us. I think this is a good sentiment to close on.
Yeah. And just have the audacity to reach out and the courage to open the door to possibly no one or possibly everyone.
Right.
Who knows?
So
I have some announcements though.
Oh.
Now it's always like a little bit of a split personality thing when I do these talks at the end, because now it's the other Josefiene is talking, the announcement Josefiene. So there was a couple of things I wanted to point out. If you are not already, you should get yourself onto the Haxe Discord.
Right.
It's accessible from the haxe.org website under connect. Under connect.
Yeah.
There is the invite link. It's an incredibly helpful community. I've been watching it throughout the day, and questions get answered fairly quickly. It's certainly a much better way than twittering at people, which is a bit hit and miss. So if you're not on the Discord, you should go and be on the Discord. And then I have one other interesting thing, which I want to quickly talk about one of our partners, InnoGames, who contacted me today with a job ad. So InnoGames is a game developer based in Hamburg. It's where we had the Haxe Up in February this year.
Yeah.
And actually they're pretty cool bunch. So it's one of the companies that I wholeheartedly approve of. They're incredibly nice and take care of their people incredibly well. And they have an open position for a Haxe or a front-end developer with Haxe knowledge to join one of their games, one of their browser games. Let me just see which one. Oh yeah, the Forge of Empires team is looking for a front-end developer. So I'm gonna drop you a link here in the chat to that, and just feel free to reach out to them. And,
is that a remote position? Do you know?
So at the moment they are fully remote because with the corona they sent everyone home. Usually they are not remote completely. However, at the moment they are very open to fully remote positions, or at least fully starting remote positions. And their interviewing and hiring process also is fully virtual right now. So if you are thinking about finding yourself something, this is a very good time to do it. This is kind of one of the upsides, actually, of the current situation, is that companies are much more open to remote positions, and that these opportunities are just becoming more and more of a thing. So I don't know if they will be fully remote in the future. I don't expect so, because they have very nice offices and a very lovely space with very good coffee machines.
We'll see where the future takes us.
But yeah, if you were looking to try something, then that's a good place to do it.
All right, then check it out. The link is in the chat.
Yeah, and I think that's all I have. Yes, that's all I have.
Then on behalf of the Haxe Foundation, I've been Simon, this has been Josefiene. We have been hosting the Haxe in 2020.
Oh, I have one more thing. The t-shirt thing. Yeah, the t-shirt thing. Like, we're working on it. I know that mugs are a thing now. I would appreciate some feedback about what else to get. It's like super hard to actually ship things to people right now, but we can at least drop something onto our Spreadshirt shop, which isn't like, it's might be a good interim solution until we're done, but it's a lot of work. So if you're looking for something, let us know.
All right.
That's
all.
Bye.
Good. Goodbye, take care, see you soon.